Recording now. We are live, guys. Thanks so much for taking out some time.
No worries.
I'm excited to chat with you both. So I've seen the film, and I'm a huge Robert Englund fan, and I thought it was fantastic. So let me just jump in and ask you, how did Hollywood Dreams and Nightmares, the Robert Englund story, how did that come about? You know, like you guys just chatting about it one day, and he said, let's make a movie about Robert Englund, or how did this work?
It kind of evolved, really, because we've obviously been working together for 10 years. Christopher, Adam, and I have been working as a company for 10 years on projects. Our first project was Leviathan, the Story of Hellraiser. Then we did Brewster, the Story of Fright Night, and then we did, obviously, Pennywise. We always wanted to do a narrative piece and some biography. I think both of us always wanted to work with Robert somehow. It's like, how do we work with Robert? And we had an idea a few years ago about a documentary about movie villains. And I think we tried to get, that'd be great to have Robert in there now, the antagonist, I think it was going to be called. And it was like, we can't do Never Sleep. We can't do Nightmare on Elm Street, sorry, because Never Sleep again had been done. It's an amazing documentary by our friend and co-producer, Mikey Perez. So how the hell did we get Robert? And then it was like, well, no one's done a documentary about Robert's career. So I just approached him, it was quite easy as that, really, in the sense that it was hard to get hold of him. Once we got there, we kind of pitched to him about doing this kind of documentary about his whole career, and he was up for it straight away. So it kind of it snowballed, as most of these projects do, and obviously lots of creative input from Chris as well, obviously, and the business side from Adam. So that's how it kind of came about, really, in a very short story.
That makes sense. And, so you guys are no stranger to like feature-length documentaries, like you mentioned. What keeps drawing you to making films like this? I mean,
it's the love of the game. I mean, I think we're all from that kind of era. Sorry, I don't want to speak on everyone's behalf saying that. You'd be like, bugger off, mate. I'm 20. But no, we all come from that era, which, we were plopped in front of the TV watching these films on VHS when we shouldn't have been watching them.
I'm with you.
We've absolutely got aspirations to sort of do narrative stuff, but it's tapping into that market. And, I suppose we like to chat about these things all the time. God knows I've bored all my friends and family with this stuff, and they're primarily into sports and everything else. So to be honest, to be able to kind of like, all right, let's justify all this useless knowledge and put it to practice with, a mixture of technical skills and knowledge, and put these things together. And it's just we love them. That's the short answer. We love these things, so we want to celebrate them, in some way, shape, or form.
That's epic, man. I love it. So how did you guys split directing duties? Like, who handled what on this production?
Good question.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird one, really, because we've always discussed this. Directing documentaries is so strange because you're not directing a feature or a narrative or a short. It's a different ball game, really. It's about the interview technique. It's about the edit and the post-production. So kind of we work really closely on the production in terms of, obviously, the interviews. I did some interviews, Chris did some interviews, and then we had an editor who was really good, did a baseline edit for us called Peter Appleyard. And then once Peter delivered his edit for us, me and Chris then went into it. Chris, obviously, he's credited as the lead editor now because Chris then reshaped the project. I then spent a lot of time with Chris at his house going through the edit. That's where the direction came as well. And then Chris was able to direct, obviously, Robert in the final interviews, getting more stuff out of him. So it's a really kind of weird kind of like relationship in terms of how we work together. But I think the good thing is after 10 years, we can argue and we can fight and we can kiss and everything's fine at the end of it all. And we have the same kind of vision, and that's really important that we have the same vision. We've got the same sense of humor, and we can find, I think, humor in interviews as well and I think what Chris is brilliant at is finding gold. He's very good at finding reactive kind of like things from people where to react to kind of to things. And I think that's what I love about working with Chris, because, that's the same kind of humor I have, and we can hopefully make an interview more interesting by putting those little bits of gold in it. And that's direction as well for me. You direct a documentary on set, but also in the edit. So that's kind of how we did it.
It's always a tough thing. It's always a tough thing to answer that, because when you say, I directed a documentary, and even for me, I question like, Did I direct it? I mean, because the director's almost clear cut on a film, even though it's a collaborative thing. The director's the one with the vision. But yeah, it's like Gary said. I think it's both sides of it, because this is Gary's baby in the first instance. I've kind of been overseeing or involved in the RoboCop documentary we're doing, the Pennywise one that came out last year. And so I had kind of involvement, but to a limited degree from my perception at the start. And it was like Gary said, when the edit came along, and we kind of went to town on it and then did other versions and, execute some further interviews. That's where right, I'm taking over this ship. All right, no, I'll share co-director's credit with you. And yeah, but as Gary said, that's, we've been doing documentaries for 10 years now this year, since Hellraiser. And this is the first time we've probably really closely collaborated in a good few projects, where Gary's handled the business for other stuff. I've been on the creative. We've both worked on this together, and it's actually been really enjoyable.
That's awesome.
Making it shape itself.
So you guys have scored, some of the biggest names in the business for this, for this doc, including like Tony Todd, Lance Hendrickson, Eli Roth, Lin Shaye, Kane Hodder. I mean, the list goes on and on. Was there anyone that you guys tried but couldn't get?
Yeah, there's always a couple. I mean, Arnold Schwarzenegger being one of them, Jeff Bridges, obviously
Alice
being
Cooper.
one of them. Alice Cooper said yes and agreed to do it, and obviously then COVID hit, and obviously we had to reshape it. Mark Hamill, we wanted, based on the Mark Hamill story. There's always people you just can't get. Sometimes it's because they don't want to do it, and other times it's because you just can't reach them. Because sometimes, when you'd probably know as a creative person yourself, that when you reach out to people, if you're not a studio reaching out, and you just obviously, people like ourselves, independent filmmakers, aspiring, whatever, we're old guys now, but we still aspire. You get ignored sometimes, and it's only when you speak to the person directly that sometimes you get to that, and you can explain to that person what you're trying to do. So there's always people we would have liked to have got and just couldn't. And there's various reasons why, but one thing we always try and do, and we're very compassionate about this, when people go to us, why didn't you get Stephen King for the Pennywise doc? Why didn't you get Clive Barker? We tried. We try everything. It took us 6 years or 5 years to get Peter Weller.
Who's Stephen King again?
Never heard of him.
Never heard of him. Sorry,
never heard of that. Yeah.
Is he a T-boy? No,
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah. But but like we said with RoboDoc, it took us 5 years to get Peter. We try, but we have to then say on a project like this, we got to just stop. It's got to be, we can't do any more. And I think even after we did the edit, I think people came out of the woodwork, and it's like, shit, shall we go? No, we just can't. We just can't, because we've got deadlines for Sitges film festivals. We've got Robert giving his creative input, and we just can't put any more in them. So it's difficult. I think that's probably sums up, I think, Chris, in terms of people who we couldn't get or wanted.
Yeah.
Who are alive.
Yeah, sure, that's true, right?
Yeah.
So how long was the actual interview between Robert and you guys? I love in documentaries, it's like little clips or whatnot, but how much actual footage did you guys shoot with him for this movie?
A lot. I mean, Robert likes to talk, and Gary's first interview with him was in his house. And when you watch the documentary, you should be, if the keen-eyed, eagle-eyed viewers will be like, oh, his setup's changed. One, he's got a painting in the back one. The other one, he's got some fairy lights. The other one's, but the first interview, which was only supposed to be one, Gary executed, which was 3 hours long.
Okay.
And then I was around for the second interview in London. That was probably 3 hours.
3 hours,
yeah. It's what's interesting about that. So in total, there were 4 interviews, but what was really interesting about it, and what we've learned on this project, and we will take on our next ones now, is the importance of doing it more than once. And especially with this, because you interview someone about something, then you hear a different opinion, then that person gives a story, and then you want to get that back and forth going, certainly in the edit. So we were lucky. The second interview, I count as the filling in the gaps, talking about films we hadn't talked about before. The third interview Gary did was where Robert started to open up a bit more about his family and, his first wife and everything like that. And then the fourth interview was actually done after the first premiere screening in Sitges Film Festival last year. Because we all felt like, oh, there's just a little bit more we could add to this. And you never get that opportunity all too often to you know, it's done. The money's been put in to, you know, grade it for the cinema. But I felt the second act kind of dropped off a bit, and Robert felt we had missed one or two films of his. So that gave us the opportunity to actually go, right, let's fix, you know, we've got this whole film now. We know what was missing. And it was like literally, it went from that first interview being 3 hours to about 15 minutes, I think I did with it. And it was great because with that one, we were able to kind of like open him up just a little bit further. And that's what people want. And in particular, the thing I felt was missing was addressing the fact that the 90s were not the easiest time to be either in the slasher genre or, you know, slasher genre fans, because they peaked kind of in the mid to late 80s. And then by the 90s, people wanted Silence of the Lambs, Seven, psychological Oscar-winning thrillers, which, let's face it, are horrors, but something more intelligent. And so, you know, to be able to talk about the fact that, okay, yeah, you did do Wes Craven's New Nightmare. It was a while beyond the other films, but well, in that respect at the time. Not like now when you get films which are like, you know, it's a sequel 34 years later, but you know, years. But I mean, to be able to just get that moment to say, oh, that's what was missing, is that could you just be a bit open about, you know, it wasn't the easiest period. And that's where we got out, you know, anecdotes like he was working on bloody Disney films, which I didn't know.
Yeah,
I've watched one or two since. So I think in total, to go right back to the base question of this, there must be about 9
hours
probably, yeah, of content with Robert.
That's amazing. That is wild. So let's also talk about the post art. Who's responsible for this one? Because you guys, all your documentaries have the most badass post art.
Yeah.
So either it's the same person or you guys just really know what you're doing.
Yeah, the poster behind you is done by a lovely chap from South America who's worked with us on some of our other projects, including Pennywise. And he's, I say his surname. His first, it's Juan Salazar, I think his name is. But he's a brilliant guy. We've known him for years, and I do apologise, Juan, when you listen to this. Juan Jose Salazar. I do apologise. I can't get Chris's name right. But he's a brilliant artist, and he just captures kind of like the essence of Strews, and I think that's what the style he goes for. So we had him do this one, which is behind you. We had him do the other one, which is the kind of a homage to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Sure. And then we've got obviously Screambox has done their own version.
With Creepy Duck design.
Creepy Duck, yeah. And we got a great guy called Daniel Isles as well, who did another one for us. We've got a few posters for this, but previously we've worked with a chap called Graham Humphreys, who's really well known in horror. He's a guy that created, you know, Return of the Living Dead poster and
Evil Dead, Nightmare on Elm Street,
1 and 2, yeah. So he would have worked with us, but his schedule now is just ridiculous. But I'm really, really proud of the poster, which is behind you now. I think
it's fantastic.
Just really easy. He's done a fantastic job. It's a career in one poster, you know.
Sure.
And Screenbox, what I like about Screenbox is they kind of take on what we've created and they run with it. And we're quite precious as filmmakers, and you know we're happy they're using that. And for Juan as well, you know, Juan Jose, I think for him, it's kind of great that his work's being seen by an audience. Sorry if I got your name wrong.
He did Demons for Synapse as well, isn't he? He started doing
he's starting doing stuff now.
The Demons 4K edition for Synapse.
Yeah.
So
he's really good. He's so good. He's a good guy, yeah. Juan Jose.
So now this doc is, you know, it's kind of different, I think, from like Pennywise, you know, the story of it, and You're So Cool, Brewster, because it focuses on just like, I know it focuses on all of his movies, but it's just kind of one guy, you know what I mean? All the other ones focus on like the whole cast.
Yeah.
Or, you know, so was that a challenge for you at all? Did that pose any?
I'll talk about I mean, so I'm going to talk about the creative, and Chris probably talk about the negative part of it probably. The creative part, I think, and the freedom for us is that we have such a wide range to discuss, you know, and we're not relying on one particular film, which we love doing, you know, where it's literally pre-production, production, post-production, legacy. And it's very narrow about that one particular group of people that made it. So it's great on that sense, but it's hard on, I think Chris will probably interject now, in terms of the narrative flow of genres changing.
I think, to be honest, it was a challenge we were both really up for. And I think we've kind of like, we've got a template for the most part with our documentaries, you know, but we do want to shake it up at times. Our other project, RoboDoc, you know, is kind of a making of, but it's a 4-part series that will be coming out and it dissects a film. So the normal cut and paste routine of pre-production, production, post-production, legacy, you know, we've utilized that a lot of times because don't fix what's not broken. But for me, what I was looking forward to was, yeah, as Gary said, talk about the breadth of a career. We're always stuck in the realm of a certain film or a certain genre, you know, and it's 9 times out of 10, you know, with Pennywise, you're stuck in 1989, 1990, Hellraiser 87, and so on. But with this, what I was really looking forward to, especially as a big fan of, I think I love the 70s as much as the 80s. It's always really hard to decide which one I prefer. 80s is definitely the more colorful and warm, you know, memories of childhood, whereas, you know, the more older and cynical I've got, I'm into stuff like Taxi Driver and shit now, you know, and 5 Easy Pieces, you know, stuff where you want to be polishing your gun on a Friday night and whatever. But what was interesting with that, though, as Gary said, the challenge was that, especially when it came to like the music and the flow, is how do you go from like nostalgic memories of childhood into like the 70s? So we have like and this was thanks to Pete, to be fair, who I know is like a big, I can tell is a big fan of like the, you know, Dirty Harrys and everything. Is that montage at the start when it goes through his career is very much like a Lalo Schifrin score for Dirty Harry. It was fun to play with like different genres. It was challenging, admittedly, because it can be a bit jarring to go from jazzy or whimsical country music to then bang 80s synth. But I think we managed to strike it all right. But that's what I've enjoyed the most, is just not being stuck, you know, just on one film or one topic for so long. You have to keep up the pace, and that was a challenge with the editing to a certain degree. There's, you know, certainly certain films and shows we don't talk about much in this, but then if we were going to do that, we'd end up with a 10-hour documentary, which to some people might, you know, be just what they want, but in a commercial view might not be that enticing to people.
I get you. That's cool, man. Well, listen, I think we're out of time, but I appreciate you guys taking out some time for this. This was really cool, and I just want to throw out that Hollywood in Dreams and Nightmares, the Robert Englund Story, is going to be available on Screenbox and digital on June 6th, 2023. So I'm excited for that. And everyone can watch it, and we'll be spreading the word as much as we can.
Oh, amazing. Thank you.
So thanks again, and I hope you guys have a great day.
Yeah, thanks
so much,
Appreciate
Mike.
it. Thanks for that.